Do you know how one woman chose compassion over safety, stepping into a world shaped by fear, disease, and forced exile, when almost everyone else turned away? In an age when illness meant abandonment, her quiet courage restored dignity to the rejected and revealed a love stronger than isolation and fear. This is the story of Saint Marianne Cope, who crossed oceans without promise of return and showed how fearless love can lead to holiness. Before beginning, drop an amen in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more stories of the saints. Don't forget to share it so others may discover this story and be inspired to live holier lives. Chapter 1. An Age of Fear and Mercy. The 19th century unfolded as an age of factories and steam, of ships crossing oceans, and of families leaving Europe for the promise of America. Industrial growth brought opportunity. Yet it also carried deep wounds. Crowded cities filled with exhausted workers, poverty spread alongside progress, and disease thrived where housing was poor and labor unrelenting. It was a century marked by restless movement, social instability, and a quiet hunger for dignity and hope. Among those who arrived were countless Catholic immigrants, especially from Germany and Ireland. They carried faith as their most precious possession, yet often found doors closed to them. Suspicion and prejudice shaped daily life. Schools were scarce, hospitals unwelcoming, and public systems rarely served the poor. Many Catholics learned early that survival required solidarity, perseverance, and trust in God, even when society viewed them as strangers, unworthy of care or protection. In this harsh landscape, the Church did not answer with words alone. She answered with presence. Women religious stepped forward quietly, founding schools for children who had none and hospitals for the sick who were refused elsewhere. Their work was rarely celebrated. It unfolded in classrooms, wards, and kitchens, sustained by prayer and sacrifice. Through these hidden acts, the Church sought not power, but the restoration of human dignity where it had been denied. Medicine itself remained fragile and incomplete. Scientific knowledge was advancing, yet many illnesses were poorly understood, and treatments were limited. Epidemics spread fear faster than facts. Communities panicked when disease appeared, often responding with isolation rather than compassion. Hospitals, when they existed, could not always heal, and the sick were frequently left alone, viewed as threats instead of neighbors in need of mercy and patience. No illness embodied fear more than leprosy. Considered incurable and dangerously contagious, it became a social death sentence. Those diagnosed were separated from families, stripped of identity, and forced into lifelong exile. Husbands were torn from wives, children from parents. The disease wounded not only the body, but the soul, erasing belonging and hope. Society chose distance, believing safety could be found only through exclusion. Nowhere was this fear more visible than in the Hawaiian Islands. As leprosy spread, authorities enforced compulsory isolation, sending the afflicted to Molokai. There, surrounded by ocean and silence, men, women, and children lived apart from the world. The policy aimed to protect the many, yet it condemned the few to loneliness. Molokai became a symbol of humanity's terror and of how easily fear can overpower compassion. Yet even in such darkness, God was quietly at work. Where fear reigned, grace was preparing a response. Long before history would speak her name, a servant was being shaped through hardship, faith, and love. In an age defined by exclusion, God was raising a witness who would not turn away. From this wounded century would emerge a life that proved mercy stronger than fear. Chapter 2. A Childhood Shaped by Sacrifice. Barbara Kube was born on January 23, 1838, in the small town of Heppenheim, Germany. She entered the world within a simple Catholic family whose faith was quiet but steady. Daily life was marked by prayer, work, and trust in God, rather than comfort or wealth. From the beginning, her life unfolded far from privilege, grounded instead in the ordinary struggles that gently prepared her heart for endurance. While Barbara was still young, her family joined the great wave of European immigrants, leaving their homeland behind. They crossed the ocean and settled in Utica, New York, a growing industrial city filled with opportunity and hardship. In this new land, their German surname Cope was gradually anglicized to Cope. Like many immigrants, they learned to balance gratitude for new beginnings with the pain of displacement and uncertainty. During the 1850s, the Cope family became naturalized citizens of the United States. This legal step brought a measure of stability, yet daily life remained demanding. Citizenship did not erase poverty, nor did it shield immigrant families from suspicion or struggle. Still, the family placed their hope in honest labor and in God's providence, believing that faith and perseverance would shape a future beyond immediate hardship and daily exhaustion. Barbara grew within the steady rhythm of parish life. Her faith was nourished through the sacraments, especially her first Holy Communion and confirmation at Old St. John's Church in Utica. The parish became a spiritual home where prayer, instruction, and community offered strength. These early encounters with the church planted deep roots, teaching her that God remained close even when life demanded more than a child should bear. When her father became disabled, the family's fragile balance collapsed. As the eldest child, Barbara left school while still young and entered a textile factory to support her parents and siblings. The work was exhausting, repetitive, and often harsh, yet she did not complain. Instead, she learned to offer her labor quietly, accepting responsibility with maturity beyond her years and trusting God amid the noise and fatigue. Those long hours of labor shaped her character profoundly. She learned discipline, perseverance, and compassion for those who worked without recognition or relief. Poverty was no abstraction to her. It had faces, names, and aching hands. These experiences formed a heart attentive to suffering and capable of steady service, teaching her that love often expresses itself not in words, but in faithful endurance and shared burden. In 1862, her father died. By then, her younger siblings were able to support themselves, and Barbara's responsibilities at home gradually eased. For the first time, she stood free to listen fully to the call she had long carried within. What had been postponed by necessity could now be embraced in trust. With gratitude and resolve, she prepared to offer her life entirely to God. Chapter 3. A Franciscan Calling and the Path of Leadership. Barbara entered the Sisters of St. Francis in Syracuse, New York, bringing with her not ambition, but a heart shaped by work, sacrifice, and quiet faith. The convent did not separate her from human suffering. Instead, it gave that suffering a deeper meaning. Within community life, she encountered a rhythm of prayer and labor that echoed her own past. What had once been forced necessity slowly became a freely chosen offering to God, rooted in love. When she professed her vows, she received the religious name Marianne, marking a new beginning and a deeper belonging. She embraced Franciscan poverty, humility, and service, not as abstract ideals, but as concrete daily commitments. The simplicity of this life resonated deeply with her own history of scarcity and labor. Obedience and trust in divine providence shaped her interior life, teaching her that true freedom is found in surrender to God's will. Sister Marianne was soon entrusted with the ministry of education, first as a teacher and later as a principal in Catholic schools. She understood education as more than knowledge. It was formation of conscience, discipline, and faith. Many of her students came from immigrant families struggling to survive. In guiding them, she learned to lead with patience, clarity, and moral strength, discovering how authority rooted in service can quietly transform lives. Her work focused especially on German-speaking immigrant families, whose language, customs, and struggles mirrored her own past. She became a bridge between cultures, helping families integrate without losing their spiritual identity. Faith was taught not only through catechism, but through understanding, respect, and accompaniment. In this ministry, she learned how to listen attentively, mediate conflict, and build unity, skills that would later prove essential far beyond the classroom walls. Life within the Franciscan community demanded more than competence. It required inner conversion. Daily prayer, silence, common worship, and shared responsibility shaped Sister Marianne's soul. She learned discernment through obedience and discovered strength through humility. Community life refined her character, forming a leader who sought God's will above personal preference. This deep spiritual formation grounded her future decisions in prayer rather than impulse or fear. By 1870, her wisdom, reliability, and integrity were widely recognized. She was invited to serve on the governing council of the congregation, a role carrying significant responsibility. Decisions now affected schools, hospitals, and the lives of many sisters and those they served. She approached governance as stewardship, not control, carefully weighing each choice through prayer and concern for the poor entrusted to the Franciscan mission. In 1883, Sister Marianne was elected Superior General of her congregation. The role placed her at the heart of leadership, yet she remained deeply aware of her dependence on God. From this position, she would soon face a call that no policy or training could fully prepare her for. Still, her years of formation had shaped a heart ready to say yes, even when the path ahead remained unknown. Chapter 4. Defending Human Dignity. Mother Marianne was entrusted by her congregation with a demanding and unfamiliar mission, helping to build Catholic hospitals for the poor in central New York. At a time when illness often meant abandonment, this work was an act of courage and faith. Hospitals were not merely buildings, but signs of the Church's presence among the suffering. For Marianne, caring for the sick was already a sacred responsibility, rooted in seeing Christ in every wounded person. These Catholic hospitals adopted a radical principle for their time. They opened their doors to everyone, without distinction of religion, race, or ability to pay. In a society that often divided people by wealth and creed, this choice spoke loudly. Mercy was not selective. Each patient was received as a person, not a burden. This vision reflected the gospel conviction that human dignity does not depend on status, but on being created and loved by God. From 1870 to 1877, Mother Marianne served as administrator of St. Joseph's Hospital in Syracuse, one of the city's first public hospitals. Leadership brought constant challenges, limited resources, crowded wards, and fragile patients. Yet she governed with calm authority and compassion. Her presence set a tone of order and care. Under her guidance, the hospital became a place of trust, where the poor felt safe to seek help. Mother Marianne insisted on discipline, cleanliness, and clear organization long before modern standards made these universal. Hygiene was not only practical, but an expression of respect for the human body. She fostered a culture where nurses and staff served attentively, not hurriedly. Every routine, from washing floors to changing bandages, became part of a broader mission to honor the sick and protect them from neglect or indifference. Recognizing the need for trained physicians, Mother Marianne collaborated with a medical college, allowing students to receive clinical training at the hospital. This partnership served both education and patient care. Yet she remained vigilant. Learning could never come at the expense of human dignity. Medicine, she believed, must always serve the person, not use the person as a means for advancement or experimentation. For this reason, she made a decision that was remarkable for her time. Patients were given the right to refuse treatment by medical students if they wished. This condition was written clearly into agreements with the medical school. Such a stance protected the vulnerable and affirmed personal freedom. It revealed her deep conviction that authority in healthcare must always be accountable to the dignity and consent of the patient. Through these years, Mother Marianne came to a clear understanding of her mission. Healing was never only about curing disease. It was about restoring dignity, trust, and hope to those who felt powerless. In hospital corridors and quiet rooms, she learned that true care reaches beyond the body. It touches the soul, reminding each person that they are seen, respected, and loved by God. Chapter 5. Answering the Call of Hawaii. In the year 1883, Mother Marianne received an urgent plea from King Kalaupapa of Hawaii. The request was simple, yet terrifying. He asked for religious sisters willing to care for those suffering from leprosy. At that time, the disease inspired dread and revulsion across the world. For many, it represented certain contagion and social ruin. For Mother Marianne, however, the letter became a moment of discernment, inviting a deeper act of faith and courage. The king's appeal had already been sent to many religious congregations. More than 50 had declined. Fear of infection, the harsh conditions of isolation, and the permanence of exile all contributed to their refusal. Such hesitation was understandable, even human. Leprosy meant separation from society and almost certain lifelong service without return. The call required not only generosity, but the willingness to embrace uncertainty, danger, and complete self-giving. Mother Marianne saw the request through a different lens. She did not deny the risk, yet she perceived the invitation as a privilege. To serve those most abandoned was, for her, an imitation of Christ himself. She believed that love cast out fear and that obedience to God often led to places others would avoid. In her heart, the suffering of the leprosy patients became a sacred summons rather than a threat. Moved by this conviction, Mother Marianne offered herself and volunteered to lead the mission personally. She did not send others while remaining safe behind. Instead, she gathered 6 sisters and prepared them for the journey ahead. Her leadership was not command, but example. By placing herself at the front, she reassured her companions that they would not walk this path alone, but together under God's care. The voyage across the ocean was long and demanding. As the ship carried them farther from familiar shores, the sisters understood the gravity of their decision. They traveled with the awareness that they might never return. Families, homeland, and the future they had known were entrusted to God. The journey became an interior pilgrimage, marked by prayer, silence, and surrender to whatever awaited them on distant shores. On November 8, 1883, the sisters arrived in Honolulu. The tropical landscape contrasted sharply with the weight of their mission. They stepped onto the islands not as visitors, but as servants. Immediately, they were drawn into the realities of illness, fear, and isolation that marked the lives of those they had come to serve. Their presence itself became a sign of hope. From that moment forward, Mother Marianne's life was irrevocably bound to Hawaii. The call she had answered would shape every remaining year. What began as a response to a letter became a lifelong offering. In saying yes, she crossed more than an ocean. She crossed into a vocation of radical love, where fear would give way to mercy, and service would become her final home. Chapter 6. Standing with the Excluded. Mother Marianne was entrusted with leadership of the Kalaupapa Branch Hospital on Oahu, the primary receiving center for people diagnosed with leprosy throughout the Hawaiian Islands. Fear filled the air of this place. Patients arrived under guard, often taken suddenly from their homes, carrying grief as much as illness. Mother Marianne entered Kalaupapa with steady calm. From the beginning, she resolved that no one would be treated as a burden, but as a person worthy of respect and care. From Kalaupapa, the most severe cases were transferred to Molokai, first to Kalawao and later to Kalaupapa. These journeys marked a painful crossing, often without return. Families said farewell, knowing separation would be permanent. Mother Marianne accompanied patients through these moments with tenderness, prayer, and practical help. She understood that exile wounded the soul deeply, and she sought to preserve dignity, compassion, and hope, even as lives were forever changed. The conditions at Kalaupapa were harsh. Resources were scarce, fear encouraged neglect, and prejudice shaped daily routines. Mother Marianne responded not with complaint, but with action. She improved hygiene, enforced order, and transformed care practices. Cleanliness became a sign of reverence for the human body. Structure replaced chaos. By touching the sick without fear, the sisters under her guidance restored a sense of humanity where rejection had long prevailed. As medical needs grew beyond Oahu, government officials asked Mother Marianne to establish Malulani Hospital on the island of Maui. Once again, she accepted the responsibility without hesitation. Malulani was more than a facility. It embodied a vision of care rooted in mercy. Through discipline, organization, and prayer, she helped build a place where the sick were received not as threats, but as neighbors deserving attention and dignity. When Mother Marianne witnessed abuse or mistreatment of patients by officials or administrators, she refused silence. With remarkable courage, she confronted authorities and demanded change. She made clear that the sisters would withdraw entirely rather than participate in injustice. Her firmness protected the most vulnerable and revealed a conscience shaped by the gospel. Authority, in her understanding, existed to serve life, never to diminish it through fear or cruelty. In 1885, Mother Marianne opened the Kapiolani home to care for children whose parents suffered from leprosy. These children were among the most vulnerable of all, often unwanted and isolated. She welcomed them with maternal tenderness, offering shelter, education, and stability. In their laughter and tears, she recognized Christ himself, affirming that no illness could erase a child's worth or belonging. In recognition of her extraordinary service, King Kalakaua awarded Mother Marianne the Royal Order of Kapiolani in 1886. The honor acknowledged her devotion to the Hawaiian people. Yet for her, such recognition held little meaning. Her true reward remained hidden in daily fidelity. Standing with the excluded, she continued her work quietly, guided not by praise, but by unwavering love and obedience to God. Chapter 7. Molokai and the Final Years. In 1888, Mother Marianne moved permanently to Kalaupapa, accepting responsibility for the bishop home for women and children afflicted with leprosy. This place stood at the edge of the world, surrounded by sea and silence. Here, isolation was complete. Mother Marianne did not arrive as a visitor, but as a mother. She brought order, prayer, and steady presence, determined that even in exile, these lives would be lived with dignity. Soon after her arrival, Mother Marianne was drawn into the final days of Father Damien. His strength was failing, his body marked by the disease he had embraced in love. She cared for him with deep respect, recognizing his sacrifice and sharing his burden. In quiet companionship, she offered comfort and practical care. Their meeting was not dramatic, but sacred, a passing of responsibility shaped by shared compassion and trust in God. When Father Damien died in 1889, the weight of responsibility increased. Authorities entrusted Mother Marianne with the care of the boys of the settlement as well. The needs were immense and resources scarce. She accepted this new duty without hesitation, expanding her maternal concern. Her days became filled with coordination, prayer, and attention to countless small details, each one an act of love offered in the midst of suffering. In 1892, help arrived through generosity. Henry Perrine Baldwin donated funds for a new home for the boys, later known as Baldwin House. The new building offered better conditions and renewed hope. Mother Marianne welcomed this development with gratitude, seeing it as providence at work. Improved shelter meant not comfort alone, but stability, routine, and the chance for children to grow within a more humane environment. 3 years later, in 1895, the Brothers of the Sacred Heart arrived to take responsibility for Baldwin House. With humility and discernment, Mother Marianne withdrew her sisters to focus fully on the Bishop home. Care of Baldwin House passed to Joseph Dutton. This transition reflected her wisdom. She knew when to step back, trusting others to serve where they were called, while remaining faithful to her own mission. Mother Marianne spent the remainder of her life at Molokai. She lived among the sick daily, touching them, caring for them, and sharing their ordinary routines. Despite years of close contact, she never contracted the disease. This fact astonished many, but she never drew attention to it. For her, protection was less a miracle than a reminder that obedience and love belong to God's mysterious providence. On August 9, 1918, Mother Marianne died peacefully after a lifetime of service. There was no return home, no final farewell beyond the shores she had embraced. She was buried at Molokai among the people she loved. In death, as in life, she remained with the forgotten. Her resting place testified quietly to a love that had chosen permanence, fidelity, and compassion until the end. Chapter 8. Legacy and the Path to Sainthood. The legacy of Mother Marianne Cope is not measured primarily by institutions or honors, but by a vision of care rooted deeply in the dignity of every human person. She believed that healing must address both body and soul, and that no illness could erase a person's worth. In hospitals, homes, and hidden places of suffering, she insisted that the sick were never burdens, but living images of Christ entrusted to loving hands. After her death, the Franciscan communities she formed and inspired continued her mission with quiet fidelity. In Hawaii and across the United States, sisters carried forward her spirit through hospitals, schools, and parish service. They did not seek recognition, but remained faithful to prayer and service. Through their daily presence among the poor and sick, Mother Marianne's charism endured, becoming a living legacy rather than a distant historical memory. The respect shown to Mother Marianne soon reached beyond the boundaries of the Catholic Church. Christians of other traditions, and even those without formal faith, recognized the integrity and courage of her life. She was remembered as a woman who crossed barriers of fear, race, and religion to stand beside the abandoned. Her witness spoke a universal language, revealing that selfless love possesses a power that transcends doctrine and culture alike. As devotion grew, the Church carefully examined her life and virtues. Witnesses testified to her charity, humility, and unwavering trust in God. Stories of answered prayers through her intercession emerged over time. In 2005, the Church beatified Mother Marianne after officially recognizing a miracle attributed to her prayers. This solemn act confirmed that her hidden life of service had been marked by heroic virtue and faithful obedience to God. In 2012, the Church took a further step by proclaiming her a saint. Canonization did not elevate her beyond humanity, but presented her life as a universal model of holiness. She became a sign that sanctity is possible through ordinary duties carried out with extraordinary love. Her sainthood honored perseverance, compassion, and faithfulness, lived quietly amid suffering rather than dramatic or public achievements. As public veneration increased, her earthly remains were honored in meaningful ways. In 2005, her relics were transferred from Molokai to Syracuse, her religious home. Later, in 2014, they were brought to Honolulu, closer to the people she had served. These journeys reflected a life that bridged continents and cultures, uniting distant communities through shared gratitude and remembrance. Today, the Catholic Church celebrates her feast on January 23rd, the day of her birth. This date reminds the faithful that holiness often begins in simplicity and sacrifice. Each year, Her memory invites believers to choose courage over fear and mercy over exclusion. Through her intercession, Saint Marianne Cope continues to call hearts toward compassionate service and faithful love that endures to the very end. Chapter 9. A Prayer to Saint Marianne Cope. Lord God, we thank you for the gift of Saint Marianne Cope, whom you raised up within your church as a radiant witness of mercy. Through her life of quiet courage and faithful service, you revealed the beauty of love, lived without fear. We praise you for her example, her perseverance, and her complete trust in your providence, even in places marked by suffering and abandonment. Grant us, through the intercession of Saint Marianne, the grace to learn love that does not retreat before fear. Teach us to serve without calculation, to give without seeking reward, and to remain present where others turn away. May her courage shape our hearts, so that we may choose compassion over comfort and fidelity over safety, trusting always in your sustaining grace. Help us, Lord, to recognize the face of Christ in those who suffer, in the sick, the rejected, and the forgotten. May we never look away from pain, but learn to see it with eyes of faith. As Saint Marianne saw your Son in the wounded and the isolated, teach us to encounter you in the hidden places of human sorrow and need. We ask you to strengthen all who care for the sick and vulnerable, doctors, nurses, caregivers, religious, and volunteers. Sustain them when they are weary, protect them when they are afraid, and renew their compassion when routine becomes heavy. Through Saint Marianne's prayer, grant them patience, wisdom, and a heart anchored in hope and mercy. Lord, make your church a true home for those who feel abandoned or excluded. May she never close her doors to the poor, the sick, or the marginalized. Inspired by Saint Marianne, help the church to remain a place of welcome, healing, and dignity, where every person is received as a beloved child, and no one is left alone in their suffering. Teach us to be faithful in the small sacrifices of daily life. When our service goes unnoticed and our efforts seem hidden, remind us that love offered in silence still bears fruit. Through Saint Marianne's example, help us to persevere in prayer, duty, and kindness, trusting that you see every act of love and transform it according to your will. Saint Marianne Cope, faithful servant of Christ and mother to the forgotten, pray for us. Intercede for us before the Lord, that we may walk in courage, humility, and love. Help us to remain steadfast in service and generous in mercy, until we too may share in the joy of eternal communion with God. Amen.